Since we have just heard the keynote address, and we have been introduced to the use of open data and sharing open data and what kind of opportunities we could get in the agri-food sector, we could pick up on this presentation and develop our discussion on these ideas. Are there any questions from the audience? If I see no hands, then I have one open question.
Your presentation, you very well mentioned the hottest side of the potato, the lack of trust and how to overcome. I mean, of course, you offered some steps and some practices in overcome this challenge and a barrier for total full exploitation of the open data. But having in mind all the user cases that you presented, what was the lessons learned in terms of building the trust or overcoming this hottest side of the potato and making it a bit cooler? Is there any practices or some sort of the approaches to take in order to take some leverage on this and to solve this out somehow, the trust building?
Yes, we have worked on that, and in fact we also prepared tools to help the use cases on this. And basically what is quite essential is that people, the persons, the organizations involved understand each other's perspective. So it's not you and me, but I have to understand why you are interested in my data, and you have to understand why I'm interested in your data. And just understanding that really is, let's say, a step forward. And then the other part of this discussion is the environment. So I can have a good relation with you, but not with your boss and your, let's say, your colleagues. And so that's also a part of, let's say, addressing the issue in what we call ecosystem. So it should be shared more broadly, how the understanding between the different parties is, and where are the benefits. And there must be mutual benefits. And if it's not mutual, it needs to be compensated with money. So it's as simple as that. So that type of understanding is, and I think that's also covered by, it's not always clear. I think that's and better understanding gives more trust.
Mm-hmm. And maybe the following question a bit, again, on the user cases that I loved really much, that illustrates practically how this works. And you mentioned some different effects that you found, during the process. Of course, improving the business as it is, improving the, the facilities, the operational elements and so on. But then you also mentioned some surplus effects or some additional things that you find. I mean, changing a bit that affects a bit the business model itself. It offers new opportunities in selling the data, opening new horizons for the farmers and for the holders of the data. So, any other additional, effects that you noticed working on these user cases that could, be an eye-opening examples that, it's not only the direct operational support that you are looking forward when you play with the data, you gather the data, you orchestrate the data, but it could be a birth of totally different business. Any more examples on that?
Yeah, well, it's my team always laughed at me because I called it the serendipities of the project. Yeah, Giedrius. One striking example is we had a use case focusing on certification, and in that certification, there was a module in which the auditors were trained by a virtual reality. So, and it was in wine. So the virtual for the wine houses, there was made a virtual reality application, and then the auditors were trained by this and can know what spots you have to look at and etc. That didn't make it. But now what I noticed is that the wine house adopted this virtual reality, and he's providing it to his Japanese and East Coast American customers to have a view at the winery. So that was a very striking, and we almost all the use cases had serendipities like this.
Amazing. Then I turn back to Lithuanian again. Bandau įtraukti ir plačiau padiskutuoti apie šito namų sektoriaus.
Now I'm trying to involve many more participants into the possibilities of this sector, and therefore we can see many possibilities and opportunities for open data in developing the smart foods. And the deeper you go, you see that this smartness means more innovativeness and more healthiness. And what could be the priorities of the state, that they should focus on the healthy food? And this is one of the areas which could be trend-setting or developing additional value added. So I'm trying now to let us into the broader discussion with all the panelists. So I'm opening the floor for all of the panelists. What would be the prospect that you see from your side? The open data, shall we open the data? And what kind of possibilities do you see from your own perspective of the innovative or smart food development? So whoever would like to start or break the ice. Well, by trying to connect to what, or picking up on the topic of George, I have a short comment on the possibilities and the scale. Within our company in the UK, conducted a survey. What would be the value of reuse of products in the health sector, not in food, in health sector. And the calculation was roughly 10 billion Great British pounds per year. So in Lithuania, we tried to assess on the Lithuanian scale what would be the value of health data. And that was valued at a couple of hundreds of million euros per year, potentially, if all this information is used appropriately. So I believe that in the food sector, the value of open data would be just as big, because the sector is even broader than the health sector. So I believe that we're talking about real figures and a very real value. And if we understood it likewise, and we started working in that direction, so we could at least reap parts of the benefits offered by such new possibilities. And I also heard from George's presentation that there is one very important aspect, how to enable access to data or data sharing in order to have a broader view, and I mean education. I believe that even George said that we should explain why the data is important for both sides. People somehow do not realize the extent to which the data could be used and how could shared value could be built by sharing data. If the people were more aware how it works, I think we would be much more willing to share our data, and we would be much more trusting each other. And in response to your question, I would say that those key decisions are, what is the key word here would be the acting together and cooperation. We have to understand what smart food entails, what aspects are there to it, and we shall all get involved and move in the same direction, because if we're moving into opposite directions, then we're not going to achieve anything. Thank you, Giedrius. Well, from the consumer's point of view and from the market's point of view, I would focus that the function of food is changing. Well, it has shifted from a means of subsistence to the type of your lifestyle. We have different foods, be it for a sportsman or for an elderly couple or for somebody on a diet. So for that you need research, for that you need to know your customer, and you need to use all the technologies. And in here I see a lot of opportunities for everybody, given that we are small, but at the same time the size or the smallest size gives us much more flexibility compared to the large players on the market. And another thing is that we could also look at the functionality from a different perspective. Food should regain its function. That is to say, food shall be much more valuable, should retain its value. Food shall be rich in vitamins. And in sausages, we see how little of real meat is in a meat sausage. So we have to go back to the basics. We should regain trust in food. So in here, I can also see quite a lot of challenges. Well, we may see a joke about a sausage, why we have such a happy piglet on a label of a meat sausage, because there is no pig meat in there. So that's an anecdote. So we can always look at the food from two sides. There is a future as well as the challenge. So we have to understand on a state level that this is an area which needs a lot of the focus, and we shall not disregard it or neglect it. Paulius? Well, about this functional food perspective, for the past 70 years, in the whole of the world, we've been witnessing the following trend. And so we are testing some of them, and I think that the majority of these trends, and I think that they are going to be there to stay. And out of these emerging trends, there could be a mainstream trends. For instance, an alternative sources of protein, or less food with less salt content. So the products themselves should be much more sustainable, encompassing the entire food production chain. So in all these topics, we are making the initial steps, and it is our mission to make these products affordable and accessible, not to only exclusive customers, but also to mainstream customers as well. And we've been running some projects in this area, both in Lithuania and elsewhere. Andžej? Well, as an IT technology specialist, this is the music to my ears, by the way, of hearing digitalization and digital transformation, about the Internet of Things and innovations. So speaking from my perspective, I believe that this industry is perceived as somewhat lagging behind in terms of its adaptiveness to technological breakthrough. We have also run one project in 2013 in the shipbuilding, and we thought that that is one of the most conservative ways of industries, that they measure the level of fuel in the tank by way of using the rope. And all of a sudden, we ran a conference in shipyards, and we talked about digitalization, etc. So I've been listening to you now. I have the same feeling, like déjà vu, that this is only the beginning of the major transformation. And when this revolution picks up the speed, then the real decisions are starting to grow exponentially, and they become much more accessible. We've been waiting in Lithuania for 5G network, which will assist in robotizing and automatizing the agriculture field, and to make all the data readily available for all the actors. There are many solutions available, and I believe that we can adapt them throughout the entire value chain, starting from addressing the problems of fertilizing, applying fertilizations, and keeping necessary records of that. On a farm level, there are quite a few conventional farms which are not run based on technologies. So there are many opportunities there, and it only takes us a willingness and eagerness to make use of all the data available. Allow me need to go broader. So, of course, we're talking about innovative and smart food and sustainable food. On the other hand, I heard a number of elements about the value creation chain. And not talking about the product itself, but also about the contribution of Lithuania into producing, processing, and distributing the products of agriculture. So my question is, where do you see in the global value creation chain and the specificity, the Lithuanian strengths, which could be added with some technologies and could bring us the major breakthrough? What would be the major Lithuanian strengths from the point of view of international value creation chain? What would you focus from your perspective? Where would you see the strengths of Lithuania? Whoever would like to start. Well, I see quite a few such strengths, and it takes me, it's rather difficult to pick up one. I believe that, first of all, we live in the climatic zone, which is very much favorable for agricultural production. So we are traditional agricultural producers. And we shall make the best use of this given thing. And since the climate change is moving in that direction, I believe that our advantages are going to be even greater, considering that the areas of arable lands elsewhere may be diminishing. Another strength of Lithuania is that we are very strong from a digital point of view. I believe that we are underestimating ourselves. We have a very strong digital ecosystem and we have very strong digital competences, such as blockchain or fintech technologies, but the technology is more than blockchain. So I think by way of combining these technologies, we could look much stronger against the overall global background. So the question is how to connect those user cases, how to ensure that there is a practical benefit to it so that we can commercialize them sooner. One of the major weaknesses is that we do not have a large market where we could test and upscale the new solutions. At the same time, being a small market, we can experiment a lot. And this possibility of experimenting, and perhaps through our partnership with larger markets, be it Poland or any other country in Europe or across the world, we could pilot test those new business models. Technologies is one thing, but we shall not forget about the modus operandi. Technologies gives us new possibilities of competing with others, and we can make the best use of what we have at hand. That's a very good remark of yours, Giedrius. I think we should ask ourselves the questions within the perspective of 100 years. Has it ever been the case that agricultural sector was the weak spot of Lithuania? My answer is never has it been the case. So is it not our advantage also in the future? And I think that we're going to be as strong as we've been strong in basketball. We've been playing basketball for a couple of decades of years, and we are continuing with the tradition. But nevertheless, we need to transform themselves. We shall not try to become somehow on the top mark in the spatial science. Agriculture is our element. I think that if we ask an ordinary foreigner, what is the first impression that they get of Lithuania? And the response that we get the most is that this is a green country, the green scenery, and green comes with sustainable or organic food. Of course, you have to find a way how to improve or how to build on your strengths or how to strengthen your weaknesses. Okay, moving along, any other thoughts? I would share the ideas of my colleagues and I can give you some practical examples. The very idea that we are ideally placed geographically. We have some partners coming from abroad, such as Japanese or Western European countries, and we are presenting our company from a country with clean forests, huge reserves of the fresh drinking water, very sustainable agriculture is the tradition, and we have very fertile soil. And on top of that, just as my colleague mentioned, against this background of the climate change, and what we managed to do now in Lithuania, of producing natural organic products, the value of such products is going to increase, the supply is going to diminish. The very same ice is Germany and the United States. And our largest selling point is that we use natural ingredients, whole milk, not skimmed milk, but natural whole milk. And we see that this exceptional feature is what makes us unique on the global scale. So ice cream is our key product. Andžej? Well, I heard the word space, moving into space, and I heard that Lithuania cannot be a spatial country, but we have one startup already acting in the spatial science. I think that's the main advantage of ours in the agriculture would be the talent, talented and diligent people. And this is the key task of connecting all the dots, connecting different companies and different talent pools where we can bring in the innovations. And I believe that we're making just the initial steps, and that we can be a country we could indeed become a country of pilots testing various innovations. And I see that there is a good combination of talents, existing good and sustainable environments that we are using. So having a good cocktail of these, we get a recipe for an international success. Since our discussion is more or less drawing to an end, I'm going to pass the last question to all of you. Well, we have good factual data how to play basketball, and we do understand that quite a lot of basketball lovers are around the world. Competition is rather fierce, and we might say that we have the data, the businesses are doing their bit, the research establishments are doing their bit, and there is yet a third player, the authorities, the governments, which may also stimulate in the right direction. So let us imagine the situation that you wake up in the shoes of a prime minister, and I know this sector, and you have this idea, I know this sector, and as an ambassador of this sector, I could do much more, and being a prime minister, I believe I could do even more. What would you do? The first task of you as a prime minister, what kind of an initiative or a measure that nobody has dared to try? Maybe we shall add additional focus on something. So this is quite a provocative question to all of you. What would you do had you woken up as a prime minister this morning?
Go ahead. Yeah? Go ahead. Okay. Yeah, I can also pick up for this question the competitive advantage issue. Stop dreaming. Competitive advantage is always based on knowledge. So knowledge infrastructure is the key. The French understand, they focus on the knowledge of wine. The Dutch on the knowledge of milk. So if you want to play, let's say, an international game, you have to find the knowledge gap. And what I see in Lithuania is an interesting crossroad of agri and IT. And I think that's your competitive advantage. If I wake up, I would say, develop a magnificent program to stimulate research, education on the crossroads of agri-food and IT. Don't bother about the small size of your country, because a lot of Dutch farmers are operating in Poland, in Chile, and wherever in the world. So that can be your test bed. But the knowledge is the principal basis for, let's say, competitive advantage. That's my message.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you so much. Tikrai, ieškoti tų receptų reikia, judam toliau.
We shall look for the recipes of success. Well, that is quite a perfect idea. I would have said very much similar to what George has mentioned. I think that, first of all, those in power can only help you. They cannot do the job for you. And that is the key idea. And if the Prime Minister is going to pick up on this subject, she should have the reliable partners that she can talk to. And being well organized and acting as a team and awareness what we want to achieve is a very important starting point. So if I was a Prime Minister, I would say, hello, who would like to talk to me? Who thinks like me? At this very moment, I have reviewed the most recent from 2021-2027 draft. I believe that is the version number 5 already. And I inserted the search word food. And guess how many hits I got? Not a single hit in this document. It doesn't mean that those in power do not care that you shall choose the IT sector and then you will be given support. I would say that given what we have discussed so far, I think it would be reasonable to say that agriculture is one of the key sectors which shall be benefiting from support, because knowledge and knowledge transfer, digitalization are the keys to success. Everything that is necessary to have this knowledge economy in this sector would be very much welcome. Because the impact of this sector on the Lithuanian national economy by 2030 or 2050 would be quite fantastic compared to other areas which we already named as our priorities. Giedrius, what about you? Oh, sorry, the Prime Minister, what would you say? Well, I'll try to be slightly speaking in an anecdote. If I woke up in the Prime Minister's shoes and I was given a few of the strategies to choose from, and one of them would be the spatial strategy to become a spatial country. Being a Prime Minister myself, and after reading this strategy, I would think that I look like a satellite that is like circling the orbit of the Earth, and I would believe that this satellite is going to drop onto the Earth sooner or later, or is going to be grounded, because the energy, well, it is going to run out of steam sooner or later. So I would then make myself a good cushion to receive me on the Earth, and I would do my best not to land on a concrete, so that I land in the appropriate place, and so that I'm not grounded, but that I land on purpose where I choose, because we all have to be realistic. We are working in agri-food sector. It has been and it will be in the future. We will need food, and we can all go to space, but we shall never forget where the basics are. And being a Prime Minister, I would always think that I would be prepared to be grounded or to land myself in 4 years' time. Well, it's quite a philosophical answer that you gave to my question. Moving ahead, what my colleagues have mentioned, I think that we need to devote more focus, and we have to understand that potentially already now this is a strategic sector of Lithuania, and we can take a number of examples. For instance, the number of people employed in the agri sector, or at the time of the crisis, the pandemic has shown that many sectors were shrinking, whereas agri-food was also staying. And the focus is the key. And then we can agree what kind of a focus we need. Would it be financial? Would it be diplomatic focus? It is very important to help to go upwards the value creation ladder. Nowadays, agricultural exports account for quite a huge proportion of Lithuanian exports, of which quite a substantial portion are low value added products such as raw materials. So instead of exporting raw materials, we should instead export high value products. And in that way, we could expect many more revenues, budgetary revenues. Well, it is good to be active in space. All these ideas are good, but you have to understand what are your long-term strategies, where you can have all your gold, where your golden egg is.
Geros mintis. Puikiai.
Good thoughts, thank you.
Andžej.
And to finalize, Andžej. Well, if I woke up in the shoes of the Prime Minister, I would do the same as the Swedish Prime Minister did just a couple of hours after being into the position. So where I would focus on would be education, but not so much for improving the image of the sector. If you want to attract new talents, and if you want to show that the situation is different and everything is changing, and that this new generation are interested in eating healthy and safe food. They want to have the traceability of the food products, what kind of materials or ingredients were used, fertilizers applied, how happy the piglets on the sausage or hens were. So this is the direction we have to go. And I think that this future generation is going to make this paradigm shift, which may help us be competitive.
Dėkui panelistam, diskutantam.
Thank you very much, the panelists of the discussion and the keynote speaker. We have taken note of a number of bullet points, which we will gladly share with the Prime Minister and with the Innovation Center and all the agencies and institutions which may be interested and who would like to be promoters of the new ideas. So now we are more or less moving towards the decision making, and this is yet another specific step towards those ambitions, and this willingness to discuss on this topic is going to stay, and we're not going to lose steam. In order to build new policies and new investment priorities, be it digitalization or funds to be used from the recovery fund, etc. We have to be really we have to act responsibly, and we have to use the resources in a reasonable way. So our contribution is going to be really valuable, and I do hope that whatever you have just mentioned, you're going to stick to your ideas, and our forum is not where we stop our discussions. We are still moving to the next part of our conference, and there are still a couple of sessions to go before we conclude our conference, and allow me to thank all the panelists, and let us all meet in other parts of the conference. Thank you very much.